Hey y'all, welcome in. I need to get these grow bags filled up. I really only need 6 of them done today because I want to get my carrots planted out. I also have 4 trees that I need to get planted in these 5-gallon buckets. So I'm going to show you what I use to fill up the grow bags in the buckets. As you see here, I laid out a tarp that I'll be mixing the soil up on. I'm going to be using this compost and manure. It's by American Countryside. I'll also be using some vermiculite and perlite. I'll be using the vermiculite in the grow bags and perlite in the 5-gallon buckets. I'll also be using some bone meal and some all-purpose plant fertilizer. And on top of that, I'm going to use this fish emulsion so that I can get some instant fertilizing into the trees. Over here I have my grow bags. I got these off of Amazon. They are 10-gallon. They hold about 1.34 cubic feet. And lastly, over here is this potting soil. It's not the best potting soil, but I didn't need the best because I will be adding in amendments. So I just got the cheapest one I could find. Here I started out with the potting soil, and you can see me going through the potting soil. It had big chunks of cocoa coir in it. I added some perlite, and then I added a whole bag of the composted manure. As you can see here, I started filling the grow bags with this perlite mix, which that wasn't my plan. My plan was to add the perlite soil to the 5-gallon buckets and the vermiculite to the grow bags. The reason I wanted to do it that way is because the perlite helps with aeration and drainage, while the vermiculite helps to retain the moisture. So I felt like the grow bags, since they dry out fast, would do better with the vermiculite in it. And since the 5-gallon buckets are plastic, I figured that the perlite could help it with drainage and compaction. But as you see here, I had a moment and I was putting the perlite soil into the grow bags. I think it was somewhere around here is where I realized that I'm supposed to be using a vermiculite in the grow bags. Now you see here, I am taking my buckets and I'm taking the soil out of the grow bags and putting them in my 5-gallon buckets. Here I'm dumping out the contents that was already in the buckets, and I'm putting them in the bags because that soil is perfectly fine to use somewhere else in the garden. So yeah, you'll see me here filling up the 5-gallon buckets from the grow bags. And then what I did was I evenly distributed the perlite mix across the 6 grow bags, and then I topped it off with the vermiculite soil. And here's a look at the grow bags. We had a minor setback, but we got everything filled up. The 6 grow bags filled up in the 4 5-gallon buckets. And I'm just glad I caught it before I started planting in them. So yeah, we got them all filled up. Now let's get some plants in here. In the first 2 bags, I'll be planting the red cord chantenay. In these bags, I'm going to be planting tomatoes and tomatillos in. So this circle here, I was just imagining that would be where I plant my tomato or tomatillo and then use the outside for the carrots. So I went through and I just sprinkled some of the seeds on the outskirt of the bags. I gently tapped them down and then I sprinkled a very light amount of that same potting soil on top of the carrots. After doing that, I went back and tamped it down very lightly again, and then I came through with my watering can and watered them in. Here we go again with the same red cord chantenay. Leaving the middle open again, sprinkling the seeds around the edges, covering lightly with the potting soil, tamping it down lightly, and then come back through and water them in well. Next up are the Danvers. Same thing, just imagine in the middle would be my tomato or tomatillo, and I'm sprinkling the seeds on the outside. Sprinkle some of the soil, tamp it down lightly, and water it in. By the way, this is rainwater that I'm adding into my watering can. I do try to use it as much as I can. Lastly, we'll plant our scarlet nuts, and of course the same steps as before. Alrighty, we have the carrots planted out, and I'll be sure to update you on those. Next up are fruit trees. I began by removing some of the soil from out of the bucket. That way the tree will be able to fit in the hole. In the planting hole, I used bone meal. Bone meal is really good for root development. After that, I just backfilled some, but I made sure to keep the soil level at the same level as it was in the pot. On top, I just used some all-purpose fertilizer, and I just scratched it into the surface. As of now, I have 4 fruit trees. I have 2 apple and 2 pear. The apple trees are Golden Delicious and Honeycrisp. The pear trees are Bartlett and Russeted Bartlett. I'm in zone 8A, and I chose these trees because they do well in my area. You want to make sure you do your research and be sure to pick trees that do well in your area also. Another important thing to consider is that you want to have 2 of the same type of fruit tree. This is because you want them to be able to cross-pollinate. Another important thing about cross-pollination is to make sure you do your research and be sure that those varieties will cross-pollinate, because not all fruit tree varieties are compatible for cross-pollination. For example, early blooming varieties won't be able to cross-pollinate with late blooming varieties because they'll already have flowered and be finished by the time the late variety is starting. So therefore, it's important for you to pick varieties that's going to be blooming around the same time. So I picked the dwarf variety of these fruit trees, and I did that because my plan is to grow these in containers at least for a few years. If you have watched any of my other videos, you may have noticed those red mineral tubs in the yard. I originally bought those to plant these trees into, but I decided I was going to go ahead and start them out in these 5-gallon buckets, and maybe next year or the year after that I'll uppot them into those mineral tubs. So if any of you watching this have any ideas or any experience, please let me know so I'll know what to do, because I am sort of going into this blindly. Here you see me using about a tablespoon of this fish emulsion fertilizer in about every gallon that I used. The reason that I'm using this fish emulsion fertilizer on top of those other fertilizers is because the bone meal and the all-purpose fertilizer, they're considered granulated fertilizers, and they have to be broke down by the soil microorganisms before the trees can can use them. With this fish emulsion fertilizer, it's considered a water-soluble fertilizer, and a water-soluble fertilizer, it easily dissolves in water, and then it's readily available for the trees to uptake right then. So the bone meal and the all-purpose fertilizer, the tree will be able to use gradually over the season, and this fish emulsion fertilizer it could use right now. I decided to make this little platform out of that scrap wood that I made the compost bin out of. I just made it so it'll be big enough to fit my 4 trees on, but so that it would also fit my spearmint plant. Here's where I decided to place the grow bags. Here's a look after everything was finished. I got a quick update for you on the carrots and the trees. It has been 18 days since I planted out these carrots. I came out and I watered them every day except for the days that it rained. And I didn't see any sign of carrots until that 13th day. You can also see I added the other 6 bags and added those to the bunch. Over to the left, we have our trees, and they seem to be doing very well so far. And over here is the spearmint. Next to it is a seeded Concord grapevine. I'm not sure how it's going to work out. I got it off of Facebook Marketplace. I'm just going to cross my fingers and hope for the best. So yeah, that wraps it up for today's video. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to hear from you soon. If you're interested in this sort of content or just want to follow along on my gardening journey, please consider subscribing and be sure to turn on those notifications so that you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. So come along and let's grow together.